It is Locked On Jazz for the 19th of September. An Ask LOJ edition that starts off talking about the coaching staff and what Jeff Hornacek's role. What prospect is the most intriguing as the season rolls around the corner? What about Donovan's comments? And what are the Lakers going to do? It's all coming up on today's edition of Locked On Jazz. Ba-dum-bum-bum-bum-bum-bum-bum-bum-bum-bum. Pow.
You are Locked On Jazz, your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
How are you? I'm David Locke, radio voice of the Utah Jazz, Jazz NBA insider. This is Locked On Jazz, your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz, giving you insight, expertise, geeky numbers, and hopefully making it way better to be a Jazz fan each and every day. Thanks so much for making Locked On Jazz your first listen of the day. We are free and available on all podcast platforms and available on YouTube. Comment of the day, I'll get to my answer, but for you, the question of the day, what prospect are you, new player, are you most excited to watch this season? That's in the YouTube comment section. Please let me know your thoughts on that as well. All right, this is an Ask LOJ edition, which I generally love, which means your comments, your questions. It's the things that I always try to be on the pulse of what you want, but I'd have to say this is the one where I know I'm on the pulse because I get a bunch of questions. A lot of them are the same, and I say, all right, we're ready to go. This is what you guys want. So I'm really excited to it. Let's get right to it. The big news of the day yesterday was the coaching staff. And so let's get right to your questions in regards to the coaching staff, which is where we'll lead off our Ask LOJ show. And let's start with Will Hardy. Does Will Hardy retaining Quinn Snyder's assistant pool by large mean that they are an attractive, solid group of assistants, or that he doesn't necessarily have his own pool of guys to bring in with him being so young? Hope that makes sense. That is from Jake Hatch, the host of Locked On Cougars. Make sure you grab Locked On Cougars. Jake's also doing postcasts after each game, BYU game, as he did last week in the incredible win over Baylor at 2:30 in the morning, and then had great audience for that, so make sure Locked On Cougars maybe is your second listen. So this is a really good question. So the Jazz announced the coaching staff yesterday, and they announced that Lamar Skeeter, Brian Bailey, and Alex Jensen from the previous staff were all returning to the Utah Jazz, along with some other members, some of which are super exciting. As I've said, Jason Terry through this whole process was one that really jumped out to me as just kind of a neat story. 19 years in the league and now kind of willing to fight the fight to become an NBA head coach rather than just feeling as though he deserves it, which I think is really, really impressive. Then some new guys, Evan Brads and Sean Sheldon joined the staff as well. For those who don't know Jason Terry, just in case, Jason was a 19-year pro. He then went to be an assistant coach with the University of Arizona and then was a G League head coach last year, applied for the job, interviewed for the job as an NBA head coach with the Jazz. He's making all the efforts. Another returner is Irv Roland, who used to be the kind of personal workout coach for James Harden, but that minimizes him a little bit. He's coached a lot in the NBA, actually since 2004 when he started with the Celtics. He worked intently with Donovan over the last year and is still with the Jazz this year. And then some of the new guys on the coaching staff, a guy by the name of Evan Brads, who I met briefly, I believe. He's the player enhancement coach with the Celtics last year and was with the G League Maine Red Claws and a video analyst. So he joins the Jazz, leaving from the Celtics. And then Sean Sheldon comes from the Spurs. Previously spending 5 seasons with the Spurs, including video coordinator, assistant video coordinator, quality assurance assistant. He's Michigan State grad assistant at one point in time under Tom Izzo, and he went to William and Mary, so he must be a smarty. And then two guys that you probably don't know, but who are really, really talented, Chris Jones and Sanjay Lumpkin, who both were with the Jazz last year in their what was called the DAV program, stay with the team. Both of them played college ball, and then the interesting one is Jeff Hornacek returning as a consultant. So the question that was asked, I have not forgotten, and that is that you, or the question that was asked by Yak is that, why did he retain the staff? So I think there's two parts to it. I think you probably touched on both. One is Alex Jensen, Brian Bailey, Lamar Skeeter are under contract and are really good, right? They're really good. Lamar Skeeter and Alex Jensen both interviewed for the job, and Brian Bailey to me is one of the rising upcoming stars when someone figures it out in this league. He's an impressive coach. I love his path. He went to Bucknell, so he's another smarty. And he went on to go play in Europe, had a lengthy career, and then kind of out of nowhere too, like just kind of actually the story is that they went to go visit another prospect at Bucknell, and then he was impressive and ended up getting a European contract, and then ended up spending long enough to get married and have 2 kids in Europe, and built himself an entire career there. Came back, built a basketball academy, and then started as an assistant coach for the G League with the Salt Lake Stars, and has just impressively worked his way up. He's done some really great job while being the Summer League head coach. So I think you just have really, really talented guys who you know in the building, and Will Hardy had to trust. I do think there is probably some aspect that Will's young, and a lot of his colleagues are the same as him, and so you probably don't want to be necessarily hiring a bunch of guys that are exactly 34 years old and like him. That's the group he's come up with, so I'm sure there's some of that. The other question that I think is on everyone's mind in regards to the coaching staff is, what does Jeff Hornacek bring to the table? So I don't really know how they're going to use Jeff, but I do think Jeff has been a head coach multiple times. He was in Houston last year in the rebuilding process and probably has learned some pieces of that. He was with a young team in Houston and built it up. And so he's just got a lot of experience. Plus he is a very good teacher, as well. And so it's just a way to keep, I think, it's just an older voice and another person that Will can tap into if he needs to. And obviously who's also very loyal to the organization. So I think that's probably a pretty good one to have going on for you. All right, let's continue. Ask LOJ. It is Locked On Jazz, your team every day. Thanks so much, you guys, for tuning in and being a part of the program. All right. This one comes in from Aggie Fan Dan. Can they make a crumble cookies flavored Built Bar? I'd buy that. All right, well, now you've walked us into the middle. Well, first of all, the cookie dough puff is just outstanding, but this is funny. I like it. You've now walked us into the middle of the cookie war. I'm going to have to put up the poll question today. It's going to have to be a cookie war question. Like, are you a Sus guy? Are you a Ruby Snap guy? I'm a Ruby Snap guy. I love the Ruby Snap, the ginger Ruby Snap. And I'm actually a chocolate guy usually. And I like okay, I'm a Ruby Snap guy. Crumble, chip. What are the other ones? What are the other cookie companies out there? Goodly. All right. I'm throwing it up. We're going to get a poll question going and see what people have to say on that. Very, very serious question. All right, we keep rolling. From Spencer, how cool is it that Rudy Gobert is the only NBA All-Star in the quarterfinals of Eurobasket? It's awesome, and I hope Rudy wins it because I know how incredibly important this is, and I was with Igor the whole time when Igor won, and how important it was for Igor when he won, that I think, I have an understanding of that. So I certainly hope that Rudy can get this and get the accolades that he deserves for that. Most intriguing prospect on the Jazz roster with the most upside. So this is similar to the question that I asked you guys today on the comment section of YouTube of like, what prospect are you most excited about? So that's a really interesting question. Like, I might go with Lauri Markkanen here. There's something interesting to Lauri Markkanen and Colin Sexton in their careers. And this is kind of brutal on my part, but like, I wonder if I took a poll across the NBA of the worst 2 NBA coaches in the last 10 years. This is not great on me. Here we go. Someone's going to be upset when I say this. So if I took a poll question of the top of the 2 worst coach, the worst, give me the 5 worst coaches in the NBA over the last 10 years, I'm pretty certain that the two names that would come up, and you can decide whether it's right or wrong, would be John Beilein, the great, great, great college coach from the University of Michigan, who took over the Cavaliers and just didn't get the NBA, and they went 14-40 and were just a total mess. And that was Colin Sexton's second year. Colin's first year was Tyrone Lue for 6 games, then switched over to Larry Drew. So in Colin Sexton's first 2 years, he has 4 head coaches. He then has 1 year with JB Bickerstaff, in which he averages 24 points. He shoots 52% effective field goal percentage, which is super good. He shoots 51% on twos, 37% on threes, 82% from the free throw line. Like, he's really good. And then last year he gets hurt. So I'm pretty intrigued by Colin Sexton in the sense that I just don't know that he's been given a platform by which to have success. If I ask that same question of who were the worst coaches in the last 10 years, I do think that Jim Boylan and possibly, honestly, and another great college coach, Fred Hoiberg. Like, Fred Hoiberg really struggled in his NBA coaching. He's been good at Nebraska. He's a wonderful guy. He was great at Iowa State. Like, it fell apart at Chicago. I don't think Fred Hoiberg would go into that group. He was 500 for 2 years, and then it, like, just fell off the map. And I think they, lost something like, I think it was like 75 of the last 100 games he coached. They lost. That's probably a little bit. And things really fell apart in Chicago. He didn't have, in fairness to him, he didn't have much of a roster. So I think that's probably, a little unfair. They traded Jimmy Butler. And so Fred Hoiberg gets fired 23. In the first year, Fred Hoiberg's there as a rookie and they're falling apart. In the second year of Larry Markkanen's career, Fred Hoiberg gets fired 25 games into the season. And Jim Boylan replaces him. There's no question to me Jim Boylan would make this list. And so Larry Markkanen's next 2 years are with Jim Boylan. And then he gets Billy Donovan, who's a pretty good coach. And he has a really good year. He averages 14 points. He shoots 48% from the field. He shoots 41% from three. He shoots 58% on twos. His effective field goal percentage was 59. Like, the league average is like 51.7. Like, he has a great, great year in 2021, and then he goes to Cleveland. And I thought, had another really good year. So the 2 years that Larry Markkanen has been coached well, he's really good. So Larry Markkanen might be my answer, and Colin Sexton might be my other, which is probably, Abaji probably is who you're looking for, or something like that. But those two, I want to see when they're coached. And I think we've seen 2 years, and I think we saw a year of Colin Sexton being coached by JB Bickerstaff, who's really good. I think we've seen 2 years of Larry Markkanen being coached by Billy Donovan and by JB Bickerstaff, and he was really good. So that's a little bit intriguing to me on that sense. Today's show is a Locked On Jazz. We'll continue to get more comments. I want to know who your most intriguing prospect is. Today's edition of Locked On Jazz is brought to you by Murdoch Hyundai, located at 4646 South State Street. Also located in Logan and in Linden. The Murdoch family has been in Utah for over 80 years, bringing you great quality customer service the whole time, making sure you feel as though you're a part of that they're a part of the community, and you are as well. And they have great product over at the Hyundais. Do the research yourself. I can tell you, you won't be surprised. I did the research, ran the data, looked at it all. And what I found was the car that had the best safety ratings, that got me the best bells, most bells and whistles, got me those unique features I could possibly get, and at the same time was a reasonable price. That's why we bought a Santa Fe for both of our new drivers, and why we just recently bought the Ioniq when we wanted to move to more electric cars in our family and try to help our carbon footprint and be good environmentally and do what we're supposed to do. That's all why we did all those things at Murdoch Hyundai. If you'd like to go, it's either in Linden, Logan, or in Salt Lake at 4646 South State Street. Please email me first so that we can take care of you and give you the VIP experience. Email me at dlock09@gmail.com. Today's show is also brought to you by my good friends over at Intercap Lending. So much enjoy having them. Was over at the Gail Miller Leadership golf event Monday at Hidden Valley, and what did I see but one Steve Carter came by, showed up unexpectedly on one of the holes. The great, our own personal loan officer, one of the great customer service guys out there. And I sent someone to Steve just yesterday. As the market changes here, I was talking to Steve, like, they actually need you more than ever right now. How are we going to get this done? The interest rates are raising, but I still got to buy a house. I still got to do things. How do I get it done? Steve Carter's your guy. 385-800-8528. 385-800-8528. By the way, you do not have to be in the state of Utah. You can be wherever they might be. Intercap Lending spreads, but Steve can help you. So give Steve Carter a call at 385-800-8528. Intercap Lending, NMLS number 190465. For more information, visit intercaplending.com, and I can just tell you there's nobody I'm more confident in sending you to than Steve Carter and what he does and the incredible work he does over at Intercop. So feel free to jump aboard and email me as well on that one at dlock09@gmail.com. NFL fans, Locked On's got a ton of great programs for you coming up. We've got Locked On NFL on YouTube. We have the Game to Game, which is a run through of all the previews from the local experts. We also have a fabulous program for you that is set up, which is the 5 TV games, most viewed TV games of the week, and the predictions that go with it. So make sure you go grab that one. That's called our Key Predictions of the Week. It's along with betonline.net. So make sure you grab all of those programmings at Locked On NFL. All right, it is continue time with your great questions. You guys are so good at this. Let's go to our next one, which comes in and is flashing on the screen. Do the Jazz currently have a major piece on the roster that could use for major building blocks of the future championship level? So I love this. This is kind of what everybody's asking. This is a great question. My quick answer on this is maybe not. And I have a bigger picture answer that I would say. So we just talked about Markkanen and we just talked about Sexton. And I think those two guys probably are the ones that would fit into this mold. They would be the ones who possibly could be major pieces, probably not superstar pieces, like massive. And I think one of the things that's going to be super important for us as a fan base, at least in my opinion, moving forward, is allowing these guys to be what they are. So, we're going to desperately want Abaji to be a star. We're desperately going to want Walker Kessler to be this. We're going to desperately want Fontecchio to be something. We're going to desperately want Malik Beasley to be something. We're going to want Jared Van. I think the key, you're trying to find pieces of a puzzle over a long period of time. I think actually the key is to allow them to be them and to not ask Walker Kessler. The goal to me with Walker Kessler, he's a drop big in a league that's moving somewhat away from drop bigs, but not entirely. It's still incredibly valuable. Protecting the rim is the single most important thing to do defensively still. So Walker Kessler, can he become a 24-minute-a-night viable drop big? That's kind of, that would be a massive win. I would think, if that's it. I think the league is getting enough minutes of the night where you're going to have 6'10" and 6'11" playmakers. Seems like about half the league will have that by the end of next year. If, Abaji has been improving every single year, as Danny said on yesterday's program, so he's interesting. But I watched some film of him. I wasn't actually overwhelmed by him defensively. I think he's got the athleticism to do it. So can he become a viable wing defender? Can he make his teammates better, and can he hit shots? And what is that, a viable rotation? What's the standard we're setting for him? Could he be a complimentary starter? Sure, that seems like that's a fair expectation for a 14th pick. Can Fontecchio learn the speed of the NBA game and evolve? And if your comp on that is the perfect scenario is Joe Ingles or Royce O'Neal, the guys who came from Europe who then weren't drafted and then were able to evolve. It took them a little time. Can we let him make that evolution in the process? So with each, Jared Vanderbilt is an unbelievable energy player, 30-minute-a-night guy who just impacted games and rebounded fabulously for Minnesota last year and defended and switched 1 through 5 defensively and did all these fabulous, let's just let him do that. Let's not suddenly because we're maybe have some gaps in our roster and we're so desperate for that piece, not push these guys beyond what's a reasonable thing to ask out of them. That would be my kind of one thing on all of this, is trying to make sure that we don't get too carried away and we forget to let each of these guys be who they are, right? So you can be, Taylor Horton-Tucker's a super long, athletic defensive could be a really good defense player, has some ball handling skills, came to the league early and young, still has some development to do. Can he learn how to shoot better? Obviously is the number one thing, but okay, that's if he learns how to do that, that's pretty great. But if he doesn't, so how does he become let's let him become a viable player without a great shot. How does he figure that out? It's probably more ball handling. It's having gravity with the ball. It's being able to defend. It's being able to wreak havoc defensively to be able to create some open court opportunities. It's really running, so I think there's a lane. We're going to take each of these players and they have their lane, and we're going to want to expand it. And I think the key is to allow them to have success in their lane and accept it. and be really positive in that regard with these guys. It might be even Daily DeVar-esque time. This is a really interesting question, and I appreciate it. It's a long answer, and I'm going to surprise you, I think. Does tanking ruin culture, or does missing on top picks prolong losing? Despite noted exceptions, the odds of getting a star drops precipitously with each successive pick till 9. Even assuming remaining vets get moved, should the Jazz be more aggressively taking? So there's a lot of questions in here by Kurt. It's a really, this is like one of the most, if we want to talk efficiency of tweets, this is like one of the most efficient tweets I've ever seen. Because he hits, so does tanking ruin culture is one question, or missing top picks prolong losing? And then you got to be in the top 9, so should we be more aggressively so let's start with the first one. Is tanking ruin culture? Because I think that'll be a rising question over time here. And my quick answer is it can, if this is done correctly. I think the process had some problems. That's why Sam Hinkie lost his job. I think it'll be interesting to see what the Rockets do. They've had a lot of problems with Christian Wood. Wasn't quite the character that they wanted, and so they did trade him and some things like that. But I also think, if you're playing hard and playing right and doing it the right way, when you suddenly get that transcendent talent that allows you to vault up the standings, the culture changes. Cleveland didn't have some fabulous culture. I sometimes think culture is a little bit of a misnomer, because really what it is talent. So Cleveland had this wonderful culture, right? No, they had a terrible culture, and then they drafted LeBron. And they went bananas. And then LeBron left, and then they started losing again. And then LeBron came back, and they won again. Was their culture great? Milwaukee wasn't very good. Jason Kidd was the head coach. They were fiddling around. And Giannis developed. Did their culture change, or did Giannis just get great? Dallas has had kind of a funky, frankly, it's had a bad culture, right? Mark Cuban had all sorts of major problems with sexual harassment issues inside their front office. Cuban was too involved. They did this, they did that. They kind of slumped in. They didn't get out of the first round. They got Luka in a draft pick. Did their culture change? Yeah, because of Luka. Luka has a joyousness to him. We saw it off their bench and Boban, and that their culture is driven by the players and the talent of the players, much more than by as much as organizations want to believe it. You can have a brilliant cultural organization. You bring in bad players and bad people, and you're it's not going to hold. So this idea that culture, and I think there is something to is Will Hardy building a culture? Sure. And I'm a big believer in Daniel Coyle's book, Culture Club, which is all about that. And it's important that Hardy does the best he can in that regard. And I think Culture Club has all sorts of neat little pieces in it on how you build a culture. I use it all the time with Locked On. But in the case of the NBA, where you're keeping score and you're winning and losing, that culture is really going to be driven by your best players. And frankly, I don't think Rudy and Donovan were ready for that. They were both too young, and they couldn't get out of their own way, frankly. And some of the retrospective history from each of them is going to be interesting to listen to, but they couldn't get out of their own way with their own weaknesses on some of this stuff over the last few years. And they were just too young. It's not a criticism. It's just they'll be better when they're 30, as we all are. And so I think that culture still, you can build all these pieces of the culture, but if one player, your best players, Mike Budenholzer is a brilliant coach. Giannis plays harder than any player in the entire NBA. That's their culture. But it's Giannis. That's it. It might be because he and his brothers taped skateboards to the bottom of a refrigerator through the ghetto of the cobblestone and dirt and brick streets of Greece, and pushed a refrigerator for 6 miles because it was the only possession his family owned, and they got evicted from their house and had to go to a new place. And so he still plays with that kind of energy and vigor every single possession. That's their culture. Did Mike Budenholzer institute that? He's a part of it. It's important. He could ruin it, I guess, as a head coach, but it's Giannis. So does tanking ruin culture? No. What builds culture is unbelievable talent that is doing it correctly. That's what I think you have to look at and understand. Today's show is brought to you by Built Bar. The new Berry Strong granola bars are out. White chocolate, blueberry, white chocolate, berry. Also, the granola duo box, the chocolate peanut butter, the chocolate coconut, and then, of course, the cookie dough chunk puffs. By the way, have you voted on our Cookie Wars poll question on YouTube yet? Also, strawberry bars are out. 140 calories, 17 grams of protein, 5 grams of sugar. It's all that good at Built Bar. The protein bar that tastes like a candy bar. It's the it's like just a part of my daily routine, and could not enjoy it more and could not be more impressed by what they've built over there. The promo code we have for you is LOCKED15. That's locked on 15. It's the only way you can get 15% off. That's locked on 15. Locked on 15 is your promo code, locked on 15. I want to make sure I didn't screw that up, which I of course did. So it is all at Built Bar or at built.com. All right. The Jazz, by the way, open preseason on Sunday the 2nd. Do you realize how close that is? Do you realize that tomorrow is what do we start? The 19th? We're like 1 month away. I'm heading Monday. By the way, shows next week. Monday, I'm heading to New York. I'll try to get a show out Monday, and I'm heading to New York for broadcast meetings. So could be fun. We'll see. Might have some audio onlys. Hard to do video, so maybe we'll all Zoom from our hotel rooms and do a show. But yeah, out with all the broadcast meetings. All right, continuing. Great questions so far. Nice job on Kurt. I don't know if I answered all of those. Simone Fontecchio has killed it in the Eurobasket. Looks like he has a chance to be a real rotation level player in the NBA. Have you heard anything from him from the staff? I have not heard anything from him from the staff. But I do think he's played great. You know, Melly's on that roster, is playing really well as also, and he struggled to be an NBA rotation player. You know, I think the best way to think about Eurobasket and NBA players is if they're dominant and clearly the great player, they have a chance. But it doesn't mean they're going to be an NBA rotation player. If they don't dominate in EuroLeague, it's problematic, right? If you go out to EuroLeague and you're not Eurobasket and you're not dominant in Eurobasket, not EuroLeague, Eurobasket, I think it's disconcerting. So the fact that Fontecchio has been that good is great. It means he's got a chance. Had he not been dominant, I think I would take it the other way. So I look at it a little bit from a negative perspective rather than a positive perspective. Aside from roster turnover, how's the transition from the Miller ownership to Ryan Smith's ownership impacted you as a play-by-play announcer? Oh, that's super interesting. I don't know that. I wonder if anyone really cares. But Alex, I didn't mean that. That was more of like self-deprecating on my end. So the Miller ownership was great in that, I was just so close with Larry and Gail's a superhero. This ownership group, my personal leadership has been great. The people around me have, since the Ryan Smith takeover, Travis Henderson's done a lot of work with us in broadcasting. It's the first time I've ever had a boss who's actually broadcast a game. And he does it from the TV truck, but he gets it. I feel comfortable like when I talk to him as a play-by-play announcer that he gets it. So that's been a wonderfully unique circumstance to have a direct boss who actually understands what the announcer's going through. I've never had that before in my life, so that's been really great. I've really enjoyed my time with Ryan. He's so bright and so quick, and just following and listening and trying to stay on board has been really, really fascinating. So I'm really positive on both ends. I'm really admire how much our organization has evolved. There's a diversity in our organization that never existed before. There's a diversity of faces. There's a diversity of ideas. There's a diversity of opinion. There's a diversity of ideas. So I'm talking about it from all aspects. But I would single out that the concerted effort to change the way our room looks has been fabulous and important. So I've been very impressed and have enjoyed it. But I also was, the Millers were the Millers. And enjoyed the time actually with Greg as well. So I've had great support. I always say to my bosses, I only ask for one thing. I want a chance to be great every single night, and nothing that's prohibiting me from being great. And I think this will be like my 13th year with the Jazz, and I would say other than 1 year that was the case. I had one funky year in which there was a bunch of crap going on, and I wasn't. I'm just being totally transparent here. I didn't feel I could be great. Felt like people were prohibiting that. But other than that, I've had that opportunity to be great almost every single night I've ever been with this organization. And that is, that's really all I could ever ask for. And I certainly have it right now. Like if you listen to me and I suck, it's on me. And that's all I ask. So, it's been great. Totally dream job. Dream job when I was 5, dream job when I was 52. So it's been pretty great. Do you believe Pushed the wrong button. Do you believe Donovan really asked management not to trade Rudy and truly wanted to run it back with some tweaks like he mentioned to Woj? Sounds like management truly didn't believe in Rudy and Don. Hard to imagine them getting in a better position than those two. So, this is an interesting question. Like, I believe Donovan in anything he says because I have no track record of Donovan lying, and Donovan is a good kid, and so it would be hard for me to disagree with Donovan. The question to me really is, if you've been listening to the show for a long time, what would those tweaks be? I think what we discovered is that those tweaks they tried to run around the league and there weren't a lot of tweaks. I would also say that after as poor a year as they had last year with as many issues as they had and just lack of zest and lack of spirit, as Quinn called it, and lack of belief, as Danny Ainge called it, and frankly, Rudy did too during the season, and Donovan did too. Like, it's interesting that Donovan and Jordan Clarkson have fought back on what Danny said yesterday, when basically if you go back through their past press conferences, I thought they said the same thing, and frankly, their inability to hold a lead at a really dramatic level during the season, I think spoke for itself more than anything else. So it's interesting to me that they fought back on those. Again, it's pride, but there's a lot of data and moments out there and comments they made themselves that seem to be the same thing as what Danny said. So anyway, my point on that would be, I believe Donovan said that. I'm not surprised management didn't listen. I would say your actions on the court are probably more important than the words you're telling me after a season in which you just went through what you went through. If you really wanted it back, let's go. So, it's interesting. The last hashtag UGG, I felt the same thing. I've also started to prep for last season and gone back through some of my numbers and the lost leads and Donovan's inability to finish in the clutch and some of this and the record versus 500 teams versus non-500 teams. Some of those data points I must have suppressed them in my head when it was going on a little bit because you didn't want to really look at what they said. But some of those were pretty daunting to actually look at in that manner. So there's a few things in there that make me, I'm getting more understanding of why we are where we are. How's that? Do you think the team wouldn't have gotten into rebuild mode and Quinn decided to stay? No, I think both these questions, I think, hey, no matter what Donovan and what Quinn wants, I think Danny is going to run this organization and Justin and Ryan as they want to run it. I think and they're going to do the right thing regardless of that. That's their job. So I think a lot of that kind of goes the other way on these things. Quickly, there's two really good questions. This is a long show or a long answer, but just quickly, how do you recommend the fan base adjust to this rebuilding phase that we still enjoy out of the season? My quick thing is that you got to change your mindset from a 9-month season to a 48-month journey. And you're watching little things that are going to happen over 48. And I'm actually kind of juiced for that. I kind of feel like I have an understanding of that now, and I'm pretty excited to watch that 48-month journey. Must LA really attach a first-round pick to have a team take Russ? He has 1 year left, so why would you rather waive him and give up a first to move him, meaning to get the Lakers first you package need to warrant it? So the issue for the Lakers is if they waive Russ, he's still in their books, and then he becomes a free agent,